Particle cannons is both the simplest and hardest weapon to use in From the Depth, and in this little instant tutorial I will show you how to make them.
From the Depth instant tutorial.
Welcome to the Gmodism channel, this is your host Eric, and if you are new here, we cover how to do stuff in From the Depth as short as possible in this instant tutorial series. So if you're looking for how to make something else, check the playlist. If that is missing, suggest it to me in the comments or on r/Gmodism, our subreddit. Particle cannons or particle accelerator cannons, or just PACs, are basically an energy weapon. You use energy and then you fire a stream of damage. The stream of damage is applied instantly. So there is no travel time between firing the weapon and the weapon reaching the target. It is just instant, which we sometimes call a hitscan weapon. It basically fires a stream of charged particles that deal damage. Think like the Large Hadron Collider or something like that. We don't really know exactly how it's supposed to work, it's science fiction. But what you need to know is that you will use energy, the thing that you store in batteries, to fire this weapon. You do not need any ammo or materials, only battery energy. So, to be able to fire these, you of course have to have a reasonable pile of batteries and a way to charge these batteries. There are many ways to charge the batteries, but it's a little bit beyond this tutorial. But if you just launched the game and know nothing about it, I will give you a quick fix. Just go down to Steam and then you have the bow tie turbine. Just put enough of these onto your platform, or, I don't know, download the platform Mark III and use that. When making particle cannons, you have basically 4 different lenses and they work in a little bit different ways. So we will compare them and see what lens can fit your weapon and when to use them. A little quick mention, we have the PAC lens as well, and they basically only make a loop of damage between 2 lenses, and that's a completely different weapon, and we won't really cover it more than this. We are going to use and look at the type of PAC cannon that you can actually shoot. First out, we have the long-range lenses. There are 4 different variants, but they basically do the same thing. They only differ in how you connect them up or where the connections are. The field of fire is 10 degrees, so it's quite small, but it has only 2% damage loss per 100 meter, which is pretty good for PACs. The vertical lens has 4% damage loss per 100 meter, but it has a vertical field of fire of 60 degrees, which is pretty good. So you can use them for basically anti-air and things where you basically need to be able to aim up or down. The scatter lens also has a damage loss of 4% per 100 meters, and it has a field of fire of 30 degrees in any direction. It has a special ability where it can basically multiply the amount of beams it shoots, so it's kind of the shotgun lens. The short-range lens is the simplest of all the lenses, and it has a field of fire of 35 degrees, but it has basically 20% damage increase. However, it loses 6% of the damage per 100 meters, so it's not suitable for long ranges. So we're gonna begin with something basic, a short lens PAC cannon. We basically put a PAC lens here, then we have a tube. It doesn't matter how you connect them up, you can have them in any direction, but you can't have this ended like this. If you end this like this and just fire it, it will basically shoot a PAC in each direction the tube ends, because the particles will just escape. So to make them only come out of the lens, you need to put a particle tube terminator at the end here, and that will basically prevent it from escaping in this, they kind of loop around here. The terminator tube also counts as a particle tube, so it increases the damage as well. So when you basically take control over this and fire, you will fire your hitscan weapon like that. You can click Q on the lens or the particle system, you can set up some different configurations. So for example, we have the damage type: impact damage, EMP damage, piercing damage, and explosive shock. These are the different damage types you can deal. The impact smashes things and works a little bit like Hold Point, applying a damage that basically deals blunt force towards the target. The EMP applies just EMP damage where you hit, good against aircraft. The piercing damage basically just provides a piercing beam that shoots through anything. If it's powerful enough, you can shoot through battleships. Explosive shock just applies a explosive damage on the surface it hits. The charge time slider decides how long it should charge up and build up the damage before you can fire. The focus slider basically decides the spread of the beam. So if it's very focused, it will be very accurate at longer ranges. If it's less focused, it will be a little bit more random at longer ranges. And the more focus you have, the less damage you deal. Overclocking is a way to increase the damage, but you basically use a lot more energy than it's worth. PAC cannons are already pretty inefficient, so it's better to have a bigger cannon which is not overclocked than to have a small cannon that is overclocked. And lastly here, we can of course change the color of the weapon. If we like to, we can make them shoot other colors of the beam. The short-range lens only has one input. The other lenses has multiple inputs. You don't need to use all of the inputs for a lens. You can choose to use only one of the inputs. So for example, on this vertical lens, we can connect up one tube with a terminator and we have a functional, viable weapon. I'm going to elongate this a little bit so we have 5 of this and a terminator, and I can show you some different examples of what we can make so we can compare them. So if we have another of these lenses here, we could, for example, also build the cannon in another way. Instead of having this 6 meter long thing, we could connect up 2 smaller ones with these. So we have basically 2 different arms of tubes, which are 3 meter each, instead of one that is 6 meter long. So if we drag this up to the same setting, or we can just click Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V to copy them over, and you can compare these 2 different weapons. They basically have the same stats. However, this one is divided up into 2 beams, and this one is divided up in only one single beam. And there is a third way to set it up as well, which we also can do. We can connect up a tube here, then we can turn it up and basically loop it into the system again. But if we just loop it like this, this thing will blow up when we fire it. I can show you. It now blows up. We don't want that. So to be able to connect it back into the system, we need to choose a particle input port. So we just click G to align it, G as in Gmodism, to align it in the direction of the lens is facing, and then we put it back here. It has to be just behind one of the lens's inputs. You can see that this thing has an arm of 6 meters, just like this one, but it is doing considerably less damage. This does 8,000 damage, whereas this does 10,000 damage, and some. So it now deals less damage. So what was this? Why did I put a particle input port back here? Well, the particle input port decreases the damage which is lost over range. So if you go into the particle cannon here, you can see arm 1, damage at 500 meters, 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer, and 4 kilometer. And you can see that now this lens deals 45% damage at 4 kilometer range, whereas this thing deals 20% damage over 4 kilometers range. And if you go to this one, it's also, of course, 20% damage over 4 kilometer range. So by using the rear input port like this, we can basically make them maintain better damage over long ranges. So if you're making long range weapons, you usually need to have these, otherwise they will be too weak at distance. An exception can of course be the long-range lens. It's already dealing pretty good damage at longer ranges, so if we set this up to have 2 different beams, you can see here it already deals 45% damage over 4 kilometer range. But of course, this thing will also benefit from having a input port like this. So if we instead go and use one of these particle input ports, and we align it and place it here, and we go into this, and you can see we are now dealing 67% damage over 4 kilometer range. So having the long range lens with a back input port like this will make it a pretty efficient long distance weapon. Here I set up a little test bed of scatter lenses. These scatter lenses are set to 30 seconds recharge time. And this is, as I showed you with the vertical lenses, all of these cannons are basically equal. You can see here we used only one input and we have a terminator here. And we have one arm that's 5 meters long. This one we have a loop back, so we have a input port like this. It's also 5 meters long, but of course this deals better damage over longer ranges, so the decreased damage is acceptable here. This one deals 4 times 4,393 damage, and this thing deals 4 times 3,514 damage, but of course at longer ranges this will be more effective. And here you have a scatter lens which has 2 separate tubes. They both amount to 5 meters in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I did the math already for you. This plus this equals this. And that's of course the same value we had with the one with a longer pipe like this. However, this basically provides 2 arms and 4 beams each. So this shoots 8 beams in total when you fire this at lower damage, however. So for example, if we were to go into the scatter lens and set a lower charge time, like fire it after only 1 second, it will actually only shoot 1 beam per tube. So 1, 2. This now shoots 2 beams instead of 8. So the scatter lens only shoots multiple beams at higher charge times. And you can see them scaling up like this. After 10 seconds, it's 2 beams per tube. And after 20 seconds is 3 beams per tube. And at 30 seconds, which is the max, we have 4 beams per tube.
Friendly reminder. Have you liked the video already? If not, do it now, yes.
We can shoot this first beam with impact and basically clear the way for the other damage types. So let's say we say this is explosive shock for some reason, and this last one is piercing. And then we can use the staggering. So this is ID 7. We can set up this to be synchronized to ID 7. Fire a little bit afterwards, and this one as well to be on ID 7 and make it shoot. We'll just double that a little bit, and then we can set it to slow motion so you can see what's happening here. There we had first lens, second lens with the explosives, and then third lens with piercing. So the impacting explosive rugged up the armor here, and then the penetrative one we seem to get through here a little bit into the armor. Again, this is a very small PAC weapon, and PACs are about the worst firepower per material and energy you can have. They are extremely inefficient, so yeah. Here we have some material per firepower comparisons, and if you watch this channel, you probably know that CRAM is one of the most efficient firepower per materials spent, but yeah, PAC is one of the worst. However, it's a hitscan weapon, and it's impossible to defend against PACs. Shields will not work against PAC, Smoke will not work against PAC. Yeah, the only thing that can work against PAC is probably if you use ring shields, you can basically have some armor boost, but it's not gonna do much. A well set up PAC will get through anything, and it's not much you can do against it. And you know, that's fair because they are very expensive to use and to set up. You can't connect up different PAC systems with each other, you have to keep them separate. So that's a good thing to know, like you can't loop two different cannons to each other. You need to make them separate entities. Like if you were to connect up this thing here, it would not connect. Here you can see they think they are different cannons. We are just going to set up a simple little PAC cannon, and one thing that's pretty good to know, that is when you build a PAC cannon, you need to think about where they can get damaged. Where the tube exits, particle beams can exit as well, so it can be a smart idea to basically test your PAC cannon. If it's damaged in a certain spot, will it blow up your entire craft or not? That's something to keep in mind, because if you set up a PAC at the wrong way, you might accidentally destroy your own AI or very vital system on your ship when it gets damaged. In fights, PAC cannons will get damaged, and you have to know what's happening when they misfire at areas you don't want them to fire. Yeah, well anyways, we now have a simple little PAC cannon. We're just gonna have a terminator. It's gonna be a pretty simple setup. Because as I said, PAC cannons are a little bit like, do you want to have 10 seconds? What if you wanted to basically recharge and fire whenever it's ready or stuff like that, and make it have a charge up to 30 if it has time to do that? Well, then we need to set that up with breadboard. Anyways, before I aim this thing, look what happens when I fire it. It basically shoots backwards and it can accidentally destroy itself. So we're just going to aim this weapon like that, so we can use it in our tests. Right, so now we have a breadboard here. Here I have some examples of breadboards, which I'm going to show you. So first, to set up this, you need a generic block getter, a GBG. We can actually build down here so you don't get confused. And now you need to go into this and do a whole lot of scrolling. We're looking for the word long range lens. There we have the long range lens. And particle cannon sniper asymmetric, it's apparently called. And then you have all different types of values here. Is the particle cannon broken? Like if the particle cannon is broken, you can actually make it so that it doesn't fire. That's another thing you can set up as well. We need to go down to the time since last reload. And it can also be a good idea to set a filter, so we can set this as ASD as a name. And then of course we should go to this thing and click Shift N, ASD, and name this ASD, so that we know that the breadboard we're building only affects this particular long-range lens. And now we need to go down to new component inventory and select the clamp. So the clamp lowest value will be the lowest charge rate we're willing to fire at. So let's set this to 5 seconds. And the highest one that is possible is 30. So we'll set the max value to 30. Click on the first connection and right click here on this connection point. Now we need to go down and get a generic block setter, a GBS, which is not the same thing as the generic block getter, because this first thing is a generic block getter. It basically reads the block. And then we have down here the generic block setter. It basically sets the block. And then again, we'll go down to long range lens. And here we are going to look for reload time. So that's what we're setting. naming this ASD as well, so we only affect this lens, and connect this up here. Just like that. So it's set to 30. And now when we're using this PAC cannon, we can fire at 30. Reload like this. So we can just fire like this and just, well, click fire. Bam. Dealing a lot of damage. And now you can see we are now ticking up. So the charge time follows the maximum charge time, which basically makes this thing be able to fire whenever. Whenever it reached 5 seconds, it can fire again. Apparently this is set to 3, it should be set to 5. I thought it was firing a little bit early. But anyways, this makes it be able to fire when it reached 5 seconds, or if it had time to charge up to a higher value, it will fire at that point as well. Can be pretty handy. Now, there is some other things we can set up as well. So, for example, if we have, I've already did set that up here, so I'm going to show you how to do that. We have different damage types as said, and this impact damage is really good at crushing small targets. It struggles to deal damage against larger targets, however. So, for example, if we want to have impact damage when shooting at small targets, and we want to have piercing when we're shooting at large targets, we can set that up really simple in Breadboard. Instead of selecting a GBS and, going through all that again, we can just click on this, Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V, copy this, and it has the same block filter and everything. And we just go into this and we instead select particle type. So piercing and impact. 0 is piercing, 1 is impact. Then we can select the primary target information. And then we actually have the primary target volume right here. So then we simply take a math evaluator. And inside this, we can provide a simple statement of more or less than. So if target volume, which is going to be A in this case, is going to be less than, let's say, 5,000, it will input a 1 here. So the current target is 0, and that is indeed less than 5,000, which means that the damage we're dealing right now is impact. So you basically use basic math, plus and minus and stuff like that, to modify the output to get the damage type you want. But we, for example, if we spawn a enemy which we'll need to make sure it has a volume, like a marauder, maybe we can smash it at 5% charge like this, so then we might want to make sure to switch to piercing. And how we can see the target volume is indeed more than 4,000, so this outputs 0, which makes our damage type be piercing instead. To make the AI not fire it when damaged, we need a local weapon controller here. So we can just name this ASD as well. And we just go in here, we take this generic block getter we got from here, and just copy this, and then we instead say, is the particle cannon broken? So then we'll know if it's broken. But we need to negate this, so we need to go down to logic, new component inventory, and logic gate. This is going to be set to a not. So is it not broken? And it is not broken, so it will output 1. Then we can have a, multiply value, so we can have, max fire rate or whatever, 100 per, like this. And then we just go to a generic block setter. And then we need to find the local weapon controller. All-in-one local weapon controller, there we go. ASD is the one we want to filter. And we just want to set it to maximum fire rate. 0 to 40. So 40 is max here. Right, and then we just output this here. So now we are basically outputting a, well, more than maximum, but whatever. This local weapon controller now is, well, it's ready to fire. You can see here it's online. If we break this cannon, it should have a 0. You can see here it can't fire. It has a maximum fire rate of 0 right now, so it can't even fire. If we go into the bread down here, you can see the particle cannon is broken. So yeah, it outputs a 0 here. And then this sets to, yeah, 0. So then it can't fire. And when it comes to focus, like, you don't need to have it at 100% focus when you fire to hit things at long ranges. Even at like 50% focus like this, man, you will be pretty accurate. You can see here at 4,000 meters, we have a deviation of 6.8 meters, which is not a lot. But if you're shooting at 4,000 meters, sure, set the particle cannon to 75% focus if you want to be pretty sure. If you have a 100% hit rate on your PAC cannons, you can see how much hit rate do you have when you look at the cannons. If you have 100% hit rate, it's probably too focused. Remember, the less focused you are, the more damage you deal. At a 10% focus, you'll deal significantly more damage than you would with like 100% focus. And you can see here, if we're firing at 500 meters for some reason, we only have an 11 meter deviation. So if we're having, for example, some broadside PAC cannons or something like that, yeah, why not? Have it to 10% focus and use all that energy to just deal tremendous amounts of damage instead. And that's all I'm gonna teach you about PAC cannons today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks a lot for watching, and big thank you all to the commissioned officers in the Army of Gmodism, the YouTube members, ECCLESIARCHY, and the government officials for supporting the channel every month.
Well, I hope this video helped you, and if it did, please leave a like. Also, go to gmodism.com/support to find all the support options if you want to give something back. That's, of course, extremely appreciated. We do appreciate likes very much as well, so don't forget that. In any case, this is your host Eric, and I'm signing out.